Hello and welcome. Today I am joined by Brad Skeins, who is physio and performance coach, and he's in one of the more exotic locations that we've done with these previously. So whereabouts are you at the moment, Brad?
Hi there. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, just flew out to Singapore yesterday. So yeah, just sat in my hotel room for the moment, waiting to head to track in a bit.
Very good, very good. Well, we'll get into what you're doing over there, which most people will probably know already. But in terms of you then, like where are you from originally?
So I'm from Essex, in the UK. Yeah, born there and still live there. So yeah, we don't fly too far from the nest.
Very good. Very good. And in terms of getting into this area then, I know you didn't go into physio first off, but what made you want to get into this line of work in general?
So yeah, I guess my first degree was in sport and exercise science, and having played a lot of sport and picked up a lot of injuries along the way, it was a sort of natural interest of mine to look at rehab and healing and biomechanics around injuries and so on and so forth. And then I think I got to the end of my sport and exercise science degree and kind of realized that doesn't take you that far, so you always have to do something else. So I would have to do a master's in whether that's sport and exercise nutrition or strength and conditioning or aspect. And just through looking around and my interest in rehab, I decided to take the physio route, with the end goal of eventually working in sport, but also knowing that there's a lot of different other aspects to that as well, which was cool.
So when you were picking sports science, did you have that in mind? I did sports science as well, and it was basically, it seemed like you either going to work in a gym, maybe a high level one, or go on to be a PE teacher. But did you have like a very clear thing in terms of anything else beyond that, or did you realise that you needed to do something else quite an early stage?
It was always my goal actually, to do my sport and exercise science and then to do physio afterwards. That's kind of what I decided on in college. Um, I, I applied for a couple of physio courses, but my personal statement and stuff was always very geared towards sport and exercise science. And basically, I wanted to go to Loughborough and play sport for Loughborough, and that's how I picked my my first degree. And then the rest fell into place after that.
Right. What was the sport that you wanted? Was it a specific one there, or is it just because Loughborough is regarded as the top sports science facility?
Yeah, I wanted to go to Loughborough because it was the best for sport. It was the best for sport and exercise science, both academically but also competing as well. And I played basketball, so I wanted to play basketball for Loughborough.
Right. And then, so was the goal then, do you think that you'd want to work in sports science linked to basketball?
Um, I think any sport. My actual passion as a fan is football, so I think in my mind I always thought, I'll be a football physio and work there. I'm sure we'll come into it, but I didn't really get on in physio, football physio myself. But yeah, that was what I had in mind originally.
So once you'd done your sports science degree and then you were choosing to go on to physio, was there any other considerations at that point, or was it like, no, I definitely want to do the physio degree? Did you have a particular plan of where you wanted to do that one, like you had with Loughborough?
Yes, I knew Essex University had a physio master's pre-reg degree, which meant I could go back and live at home and save some cash and spend some time with friends back home as well. So that was always in my mind. I did have a little wobble towards the end of my sport and exercise science degree. I kind of got to the point where I'd maybe had enough of education, and another 2 years of education was a little bit daunting. So I did look around at other prospects, through all different various kinds of professions. I'm talking like accounting and law and all sorts. I think I was probably saved by the fact that we hit a recession at that point and no one else was hiring, and it kind of forced me to carry on with my initial goal. And yeah, I'm reaping the rewards of that now.
Yeah, no, that's great. So once you'd done your physio degree, what was your first role there, and what were the placements that you did before you actually graduated?
So before I graduated, I did all your usual placements, respiratory, MSK, neurology, care of the elderly. So I had some really good placements, and it was actually leading on from a placement which led to my first actual physio role. So again, it was a time when it was really hard to find physio jobs. So I got lucky that I did very well on a certain placement at Basildon and Thurrock University Hospital. That was on a respiratory placement, and then I straight after graduating, I joined their bank, and they pretty much had full-time bank roles at that time rather than actually hiring staff. So I must have done that for a few months, and then eventually got a band 5 rotational role. Um, Funny enough, my first rotation was respiratory, so I ended up doing about 6 months in a row of respiratory physio. But then rotated round and did MSK and did stroke ward, did orthopedics, did care of the elderly. So yeah, I got a real taste of hospital life, being on the wards, and thoroughly enjoyed it as well. I look back at that time now as just a really good education in the medical field.
And what was the dynamic like of the other people on that course? Because with it being a post-grad course, what was the dynamic? Was it like older people? What was their backgrounds, like similar to yours or completely random?
Yeah, I'd probably say 75% were similar to mine. They'd done sport and exercise science at some point, and they'd either come straight into, it was either sport and exercise science or sports therapy, and they'd either come straight into the masters, or they'd taken a year out and kind of worked for a year, whether that be PTing or coaching or doing some sort of sports therapy, and then realizing they needed to progress a little bit further. So that's probably 75-80% of it. And then there was I guess a few like older students that had been doing different jobs altogether, and they decided they wanted to have a career change. But yeah, we were a cohort of 30, and I think, and also just seeing from being an educator within the hospitals and stuff as well, yeah, master students come in with experience already, so it's normally a very good group, a very motivated group, and you get a lot of smart individuals there as well.
And did you find that different yourself then? Like you say, with the more mature students going through there, was the experience different in general?
Um, Certainly, those that had come from different professions, you could see they had a lot of catching up to do with us, who had just sort of come fresh off the back of a sport and exercise science degree, and you had that basic knowledge of anatomy and physiology, and some of them were playing catch up. But no, other than that, yeah, it was a good, hard-working group.
And then, so once you'd gone through your placements, you'd done the respiratory side of things and the other rotations. Like, what was your first main role, and also like movement into working in sports?
So whilst I was doing my rotations, I was volunteering at any local club that would take me. So there was a few local clubs. So Chelmsford City, who played in one of the um, non-league football leagues. I used to go down there 2 nights a week, just shadow the sports therapist there, and just help out. Do a bit of massage, do a bit of taping, and just generally try and learn a bit from there. I used to work a Saturday for another local team, just pitch side stuff. So just got my first aid qualification, and just did pitch side injuries from there. And then I got after a few months of doing that, I applied for a academy role at Southend Football Club, which was 1 night a week doing like an injury clinic at training, and then a Sunday covering their games. So I kind of kept it all up, all those 3 teams at the same time, whilst also doing my NHS job, just to get as much experience as I possibly could. And then my first big role in sport would have been when I got offered a first team role with Southend Football Club, which which I took. So after doing probably about 20 months of NHS junior rotations, I then moved into Southend Football Club.
And so what was it like then? You had these aspirations to go and work in professional sport, and you're doing probably not that glamorous work of 3 different jobs in different areas. Like mentally for you, did you always think, no, I love this? Or were you thinking, what is this all about?
Yeah, I was loving it at the time. I was really passionate about just becoming the very best physio that I could be. I knew I wanted to work in sport, but also at the time I was chasing a static MSK role as well. So I knew more and more experience and patient contact time would help me learn in that way. So yeah, I was just trying to get as much as I could.
Right. And so what was it when you went full time at Southend? What was that experience? What was the medical department? What was the dynamic of that?
It was so I went full time, and essentially I was head of the academy and for medicine, and then assistant first team physio as well. And that was basically because there was only 2 of us. So you had the first team physio and then me, and we were responsible for the first team, the reserve team, and the entire academy as well. I mean, we had a few casual staff, like I was myself, looking after some of the academy lot. But yeah, it was tough. We worked 7 days a week. We used to get in 7 in the morning and leave around 7 o'clock at night. You know, you have that kind of expectation that you might get a day off after a game, but then injured players have still got to be in. So yes, everybody else might have a day off, but you're in with the injured players, and we would do that for 10 months of the year. So yeah, no, it was tough. Obviously, impacts on other life as well. I remember at the time as well, I just started a role in private practice as well. Again, just an evening a week, and yeah, I couldn't fit that in at all anymore. So it was kind of weighing up that I was losing a bit of cash as well, but all right, I'm in sport. Let's give this a go. But yeah, I didn't get on so well in football. Actually, I just didn't. As a fan, football's a real passion of mine. Big football fan. Always thought I wanted to work in football. And I think it might have just come a bit early in my career. So I'd only done 5 or 6 months of static MSK on my rotations, and then I was shoehorned into this football role where just felt like I was seeing the same thing all the time. It was always muscular injuries. It was always a bit of soft tissue work. It was always muscle injury based rehab. And it wasn't that I was, yeah, I guess I kind of felt like I was de-skilling a little bit, even though I hadn't, I guess I really felt like I hadn't built up my core skills in physio, and football wasn't giving me the opportunity to become the physio that I wanted to. And it's interesting because I speak to a couple of football physios now, and they comment exactly that. They've been in football for so long, they would love to go and do something else, but they just can't. They're just so into that football mold that they can't go and do something else. Whereas you take a look at my career, I've worked in 4 or 5 different sports over the span of 10 years now, and it's been really nice, and it's something that I really enjoy, going into different sports and applying sort of my skills in that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, I can imagine you were relatively young then at that point. It's quite a mature thing to look at it and think, actually, even though football is the biggest sport arguably in the UK, so was that a conscious decision that you thought, well, I may be limiting my opportunities if I do move out of here?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I was thinking in terms of limiting my opportunities. I think I was just thinking more that actually there was two things that were on my mind as a young physio. I was like 20, I guess 22 at that sort of time, and the first thing was I wasn't seeing as varied caseload as I wanted to. So I wasn't becoming the MSK physio that I wanted to become. I wasn't getting good at shoulders, or wasn't getting good at backs. I was just seeing lower limb muscular injuries mainly. And then the second thing on my mind there was, I knew that being in football, unless you get to the very highest level, you're not gonna get paid. And we've got to think about money at some stage. Not going to get paid as well as I might like to be paid. And knowing that to achieve maybe the income that I wanted, I would need to do some private work on the side, and to be able to do football physio. So that drove my decision. Those two things.
So what did you decide to do then at that point?
I left football. I stepped away and went back into the NHS. Went back to a static MSK role, still band 5. So, and then just become a workhorse of an NHS MSK department whilst doing a bit of private work on the side. But looking back, it was definitely the right decision to do, because you then start to see 50, 60 patients a week, and I certainly was surrounded by a very good group of mentors, people I could tap into knowledge of, and were willing to give knowledge and give time to do joint sessions and sit down with me and go through and really expand my knowledge that way. So it was an important decision for me, that.
Yeah, that is a very mature decision at 22 to think, because again, every young guy's dream would be, I love football, want to be in it, and you've come out of it. But I can see, if you're driven by being the best physio you can be, then you can understand like why you would do that. And then, did you have a plan though of going back into the NHS, of thinking, right, what is my next sport going to be? What's the next opportunity within that area?
I did exactly that, and that's when I played basketball, so I kind of started looking at where I might like to work, and came across a basketball role in the national setup. I took a little break. I must have taken about a 3 to 6 month break from sport. I didn't do anything. I didn't even do the local stuff anymore, which I just sort of concentrated on the static role, and then started to get itchy feet again, wanting to be in sport. So I had a little look around, and I had a contact, or someone I knew within the basketball setup. So I remember pinging him a message, and his response was, actually, I've got a couple of roles coming up soon. Keep an eye out and apply. And I did, and I got a role with the junior setup in Team GB with basketball. So looking after under 15s, under 16s, England and Team GB setup. So it was good, and I did that for 3 or 4 years with basketball. So it was good.
So is that part of AIS, or is that a separate setup?
Separate setup. Yeah, it's decentralized from the AIS. Comes under so there's 2 sections to it. You've got England basketball, and then you've got Team GB or British basketball. Funding slightly different for both.
Right. And then, so you were doing that alongside the NHS work?
Yes. Yeah. So I did that, and it was quite nice. It was like camps throughout the year. So you would have 5 or 6 camps, and then you'd go away for a tournament. Camps would be 3 or 4 days long. Tournament, you might be away for 5 or 6 days. My missus wasn't always too happy that I was taking holiday to go and work, but these things you need to do.
Yeah. And having worked with like the academy, both in football and now in basketball, like just in terms of the athletes, because you've got a sports science background as well, like I'm sure you found that really interesting, seeing the different physiological and physical differences between them. Like, could you pinpoint anything particularly other than height?
I think basketball, just it lends itself to being a bit more dynamic, a bit more agile, bit more powerful. Whereas basketball's played pretty much completely anaerobically, whereas obviously football, you work through different energy systems there. So the basketball athletes were definitely more powerful athletes, whereas within football, probably a bit more technical, a bit more tactical, in terms of the way that they develop the players.
I'm sure you've watched The Last Dance more than once.
I have, yes.
What did you think of that?
Yeah, great show. Yeah, really, really good. And I'm just watching the Tom Brady one now as well, and that is just on par. It's very, very good.
I mean, it's just that the Michael Jordan thing, and the more you see of like these top, elite level athletes, like you sort of see the drive within them, and it is quite interesting seeing that single-mindedness. And now you're in an individual sport as well. Like, what did you think of when you sort of seeing these athletes of individual versus team and the psychology of it? How big a part has that played in all the sports and all the work that you've done?
Yeah, you definitely see a few attributes in the very best players, or the ones that make it to the very highest level, and a lot of that does come from the mindset rather than anything else. That single determination to be the best. But I think also, and I think one of the key attributes across very best athletes I've worked with, and I'm thinking of the gymnastics and the Formula One right now, and also when you watch shows like the Michael Jordan show or the Tom Brady show, and it's that ability to be flexible, to be exactly the same when there's complete chaos going around you, to still do your job in exactly the same way when something's going wrong just before you go out on court or just before you go out onto the track, and nothing changes.
Yeah, no, I can imagine you'll have seen some very impressive people and mindsets alongside the physical attributes. And then, so you've done the basketball. Was gymnastics next?
Yeah, so I did. I think it must have been 5 years with basketball, and it just came to a natural end. Basketball wasn't very successful at that time. We did win a trophy in the junior category, which was cool. But the senior teams weren't doing very well. They didn't qualify for the Olympics. A lot of funding was pulled, and essentially we stopped being paid. We were asked to do it for free, and I was at the point in my career where I was, I wasn't ready to work for free anymore. So I took a little break again. It wasn't long. Kept my eye on the sports jobs websites and saw that this gymnastics role popped up, and it was quite local to me. So again, gymnastics is an uncentralized sport. The gymnasts train where they want to, so mostly in their sort of local gyms, and then depending on the level of gymnast and the number of gymnasts at a particular centre, then British Gymnastics will place a physio with them. So they'll have their main set of physios at Liddeshaw, and then they kind of oversee us as site physios. So yeah, took the role with gymnastics, and at this time I was also just doing private practice work. So I'd sort of weaned down my NHS work and built up all my private practice work to the point where that was busier than I needed to be. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed gymnastics. It was a new experience for me because this was my kind of first different sport, because you knew a bit about football. I played basketball, so I knew about basketball. So I was coming into gymnastics fully fresh, and I thoroughly enjoyed just kind of taking a look at the physical and mental demands of what the sport was, what each apparatus was, and yeah, figuring out how I can fit in and best utilize my skills to help the athletes.
I mean, gymnastics has been a really successful sport for Britain for a number of years. So were you involved in any of like those people that have gone on to like have an amazing success?
Yeah, very lucky to spend 4 years working through an Olympic cycle with Max Whitlock, which culminated in the gold medal last year in Tokyo. Yeah, we won a few world championships and European championships and British medals along the way as well. So I worked at South Essex Gymnastics Club, which has a lot of the Team GB athletes there. So I was very lucky to be in touch with, I think, 5 or 6 of the Team GB squad at that particular site. So it was an important hub for British gymnastics.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a aficionado of like gymnastic, but Max Whitlock, just incredible, just because he's at multiple different events, and it's like the physique of these people. Just looking at that, they're all like really fresh faced, but then absolutely stacked. It's just
Yeah,
like how much work goes into that, or how much is it natural ability and natural physique versus work?
it's a lot of work goes into it. These guys train 6 hours a day for 6 days a week. And it's grueling as well. You know, the men compete in 6 apparatus, and you think of like the rings and the parallel bars and the amount of stress that is placed on the upper body, the shoulders. You know, a lot of repetitive type injuries, but also trauma injuries from coming off the apparatus wrong and falls and missing the vault. And so yeah, it's a very, very physically demanding sport. Probably, the best condition of athlete that I've ever worked with. But I think it's also a sport where you can, as a physio, make a really big difference to some of these gymnasts in terms of keeping them fit and healthy, or helping them to recover from injury and get back to what they're doing.
And then in terms of incorporating your sports science as well with that, is that something that has like direct benefit in terms of being able to help with the like the performance enhancement as well as that the injury management or prehab?
Yeah, definitely. I think within that setup, so the guys would have a strength conditioning coach also that was based up at Learshore. They would have a plan sent to them, but it was managed, pretty much remotely. So to have a physio on site which had that additional knowledge around there meant, even if you're just a sounding board for questions, or from a rehab point of view, you're just tweaking the program a little bit and you can do it on the fly without needing to circle back to HQ and delay things that way. And you work so closely with these guys that you almost become a sounding board for all sorts. So, and I'm not saying you go outside your scope of practice or anything like that, but they might come in and be asking you questions about, I don't know, nutrition, or what they should do about their hydration, or they're thinking about doing a bit of running to, I don't know, lose a bit of weight or something. What do you think? And at least you can comment on there or guide them in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, and like how onerous was that on your time as well? So compared to the football, which was like 12-hour days or whatever that was, how did this compare when you were doing gymnastics?
So this was a part-time role. I'd be down there 2 days a week for probably half a day. So 2 days a week for half a day, depending on the workload. And some weeks it could be very busy if you had a lot of injuries. Other weeks, you'd hope to be a bit quieter.
And then so you doing private practice at that time as well, and that was the rest of your week?
Yeah, so I'd slowly been reducing my hours in the NHS and slowly building up my hours in private practice, until I thought, what, it's ready to give it a shot fully in private practice. So I split my time between a practice in Chelmsford where I lived, and a practice in London. And I ended up moving around a few different practices in London, just sort of chasing a certain place where I wanted to work. And then yeah, but no, it was all good experiences.
And then if you're looking for that particular place in London, is that for like the dynamic? Is it like you want like a Harley Street location? Is it elite sport dynamic? Is that the sort of criteria you were looking for?
Yeah, it was the type of person, the type of referral that I wanted to see. So it was Harley Street. It was a Centre for Health and Human Performance, CHHP, and yeah, after working in a couple of London practices, eventually wormed my way in.
Yeah, well, I'm still trying to pin James down to do one of these with him. So I know he's off with Andy Murray in various places, whatever he's doing now. But no, CHHP is an incredible location. We've done a number of events there, like the likes of Andy Walling as well, and some really great guys. I know Ian Gat works out of there as well. So yeah, so what was that experience like working at CHHP?
Yeah, it was good. Really good clinicians around you that you seem, for me, just seem to go into conversation on certain things in a much deeper level than I had before. So it challenged me in that sense when, you're starting to get, starting to get to a point in the career where, you feel that you're a good physio, and then you surround yourself again with different people, and it challenges you to think, hang on a minute, maybe I don't know as much as I thought I did. So yeah, it was a fun time. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
So were you in there for a specific set of clients, or were you just seeing the people that came through? Because it's a very heavily athletic population, isn't there, of elite athletes and so on?
Yeah, I would see anyone. I was very much a general physio. I had a slight lean towards shoulders at the time. A lot of my referrals had come from a couple of shoulder consultants, which I, just networked and got on very well with. But then I was also seeing a lot of clients from a couple of sports medicine doctors as well, so which were much more varied. As much as I ever think about specializing in one area, it's just not me. I always want to see everything. I am definitely a generalist physio and always will be.
Yeah, I never get bored of walking down that road. It's like Harley Street is just absolutely stunning, isn't it? Just everything just looks amazing down there. So I can imagine it would have
Yeah, it's
been a great.
nice part of the world.
Yeah, very much so. So how long were you there, or are you still involved with CHHP?
It wasn't that long actually. I think maybe just about a year with them, because I spent couple of years in West London, working in Ealing with, again, just another private practice in London, and then also still doing the Chelmsford physio, and then moved into CHHP. And then it was through knowing a few people there that the Formula One role was brought to my attention, and eventually came my way. So it kind of opened up other doors for me.
So how did that come about then?
It was, I think I'd spent a number of years working in private practice, and I was starting to think, okay, what else might I do? You're seeing 50, 60, 70 patients a week, and again, it's hard work. You enjoy it, but it certainly takes it out of you. So I was kind of, I guess, just looking around for options where it might just reduce my workload a little bit. And a few of the guys linked with CHHP were involved in Formula One. So chatting with them, and got me chatting to people that were involved with a company called Hint Performance. And then one conversation led to another, and I ended up in Finland on their induction week, and a role got offered to me there. A day after flying home from Finland, I flew out to Barcelona, met Max, and got offered the role, and the rest is history. It all happened very, very quickly. Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, that's very understated there. So, like for that then, so what was that when you approached about a role? Is it at that point? Is it like Red Bull Physio? Because there's a number of different. It's a big company, isn't it? So was it always going to be just working with Max?
Yeah, so it was a performance coach role. They were looking for someone who was dual qualified in physiotherapy and strength conditioning, and obviously I had my sport and exercise science as well. So I had the credentials from that point of view. I'd worked with elite athletes in the past, mainly utilising the experience from gymnastics and winning medals there. Yeah, I think the main thing with how they were offering out roles was kind of just testing the water with who could be flexible to take on the sort of demands that working with an individual across a sport like Formula One takes. Initially I did say no. I said I haven't got the time for this. It was a lot of days away, and I had other things that I was working on with the private practice and those sort of things, and a lot of time away from home and family, and then yeah, I think I went home and Googled who Max was and realised, hang on a minute, there's an opportunity here. Maybe I should give it a go. And when they came back a second time, I said, yeah, go on in. Let's see how we go.
So what you mentioned those like varying demands that you've got with that, so you can understand that you're working with one person, which I can imagine is quite intense, but then also just like what are the other things that that they consider when they're recruiting for someone?
I think it's mainly the travel demands and the time away. Initially, and it varies season to season and demands depending on how you work with your driver or your athlete. I mean, me and Max have a very good understanding of, you know, when we need to work, when we need to take a bit of time away and not be with one another, which is good. But I think the initial demand or the initial sort of demand from their side was around 240 days a year, which you would be away for, which is a big number. And again, depends on how you can kind of work with your driver and the flexibility that both of you have as to whether you're actually away for that number of days. But yeah, it's a lot.
And then what from his perspective, I'm sure he's got the final say in terms of, right, yeah, I want to work with them or I don't want to work with them. Like, how long did you spend with him before that decision was made?
Half a day. So when I went for this half a day, I thought I was an outsider for the job because he'd spent a couple of days with other people, and some people had spent like a part of a race weekend with him because he'd gone through a selection process. So yeah, I just spent half a day. But when you're working with one individual, the relationship's so important, and we hit it off quite early. And I also hit it off with his family. His family were there when I met him, and I think that was a big factor in me getting the role, in the fact that I got on with them and stuff as well. And yeah, because you end up spending so much time together, it's really important that relationship is strong.
Yeah, you can tell just from talking to you and what you've said and about that you're obviously a really driven individual and you've got specific things that you want to achieve. And how difficult is it to, I can imagine not for you actually, but how difficult is it to keep that boundary of you want to keep the athlete happy, so to speak, but also you know that you need to really challenge them as well and tell them things that maybe they do, maybe he's driven enough as well to know that he does need to do the physical side of things as well. But how is that of trying to keep the personal and the professional appropriate?
Yeah, I think you set your goals at the start of the season as to what you want to achieve, and for me, I'll lay out a number of physical goals that I needed to meet by certain times through the year, and we'll agree on them together. he's been in the sport a lot longer than me, and actually educated me more on the physical demands than the books could. So I guess it's that shared goal setting and that shared decision making and setting out the plan early on, so that there's no I guess failing of expectations when a certain challenge does arise. And the same goes with time as well. One of the things we agreed very early on was that if there's not a race, then every non-race weekend we'll take off, no matter what, because we travel so much, we miss so many weekends. We don't want to then be training over a weekend for the next one. So we will fit our training in and around the weekend, but any non-race weekend we'll take off. So just little things like that and setting them out early.
Yeah. And so are you based like with him? Is he Monaco based? Like are you based with him a lot of the time, or England, or what's like your week or month look like?
Yeah, so he lives in Monaco. So I will spend 1, 2, maybe 3 days a week out there when we're not racing. And then when we're racing, it might be, 1 day a week out there and then the rest racing. So I guess a typical week for me if it's a race week, as I say, we've got a back-to-back. We race on the Sunday. I would get home for the Monday. I'd maybe have Monday, Tuesday at home, and then head out to Monaco on the Wednesday. We'd maybe train on the Wednesday, and then on the Thursday we fly to wherever we're racing, and then Thursday to Sunday we're in race mode, and then Sunday we go home again. And then if it's a non-race week, then we fly home on the Sunday night. I'll probably have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at home, and then maybe Thursday, Friday at the end of that week, do some training, Saturday, Sunday off. I always have Mondays off as well. That was something that I bought in this year. And then I'd be back out in Monaco maybe Tuesday and Wednesday.
So my brother lives, or my sister-in-law taught at the International School of Monaco, so I was over there quite a lot. And you do see quite a few F1 drivers walking around. It's pretty normal, isn't it, over there? But then in terms of like for the training, then, because it's an unusual place, Monaco, isn't it? Like is like he's got a gym home setup that you would go and work from.
Yeah. So he's got it all set up at his place. There is a gym in Monaco, or a couple of gyms in Monaco that can be used as well. But it's we tend to stay away and do our work at home in our own comfort.
Yeah, very wise, very wise. And then in terms of like there's the physical demands, it's quite a unique sport, and like there's a number of different physical requirements. Like what are the things that you particularly notice or see that is absolutely imperative to be a successful F1 driver?
Yeah, I think the first thing I always say about sort of training to be an F1 is you're probably not going to improve performance in the car, i.e. you can be as fit as you possibly can be. It's not going to add lap time to your qualifying run or something like that. It's not going to take lap time away, I should say. However, if you don't meet the certain physical demands, then it could reduce your performance, i.e. if you're fatiguing in the back end of a race, then you're going to make poor decisions and potentially end up in the wall or not get the win that maybe you should do. So you have to reach a certain level of physical demand. And I think the key things there, firstly, is cardiovascular fitness. You need to be fit enough to overall withstand an hour and a half race, but also withstand that in quite high temperatures. They burn similar calories to what you would in a half marathon when they're sitting in the car there. So they need to be able to tolerate that while still making high stake decisions on track. Neck strength is really important. Highest G-force corners go up to 6 Gs, so 6 times your body weight through the head. So imagine the head weighs about 5 kilos, helmet on top is another 2.5 kilos. You're pushing 6 times that through the side of the head as they go around a corner. Again, if you fatigue in the neck, then you're not going to be able to take the fast line, i.e. the fastest route around the track. So you're going to lose lap time again. So they're probably the really key defining factors. If we were to just test 2 things, we'd probably do a VO2 max test and then neck strength tests. We do look at all of it. So we do look at upper body power, lower body power, core strength as well, to get an overall fitness. And then you move into the more sort of reaction coordination phase as well. And I think and it's not very well researched, I think there'll be more coming out with some introductions of sort of virtual reality in terms of assessment and training for these drivers. But actual visual acuity and high level decision making under pressure tend to be 2 key factors which, maybe cut an F2 driver from an F1 driver. If you really want to make it to the very top, your vision and that decision making is really key aspects.
Yeah, because there's so few of them, isn't it, in terms of F1 drivers? There's less than 20 for who are involved in that. So it really is as elite as it gets in terms of that level of sport.
Yeah, only 20 can do the job.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And in terms of like your development, then you're working with, again, a real exclusive athlete person. Like, how challenging is he to you in terms of like driving you on and picking you up on things? How does that work?
Yeah, good question. I guess just in terms of, he likes to know why we do stuff. So to have a good explanation, good reasoning as to, why we might be doing this particular exercise or why we might be training in this particular way. And I think that's nice because, he wants to know why he's doing something and how it affects him, whether that be in the car or just from a physical level. So I guess that's the biggest challenge. Yeah, that would be it.
And in terms of like, you obviously really committed in terms of like physio and sports science S&C, but in terms of like your own development from like professional developments, like do you read books that are around mindset or anything like that? Like what's your standard reading list?
Yeah, it covers quite a breadth these days. It's not purely MSK physio based anymore. So yeah, just try and make sure I cover all the areas, really, all the bases, and there'll always be something that crops up throughout the year. So for example, leading into testing next year, so in January we'll do all our pre-season testing, and we really want to have a better way of testing reaction time and vision, and we're looking into using virtual reality and the headsets and bits there. So that's currently on my reading list for some of the long flights coming up. So yeah, it varies as to what the hot topic is at the time.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. So, and then in terms of your career, I know you're not like you've got a long way to go, but are there any particular 1 or 2 things that you just think, wow, this is incredible that I'm involved in this, like really memorable moments?
Winning world championships. That's what we're here for. But yeah, I think it's quite, I guess, humbling is the word. And I still turn up and just do my job. And I guess having not been a fan of F1 or had any interest in F1, I don't always see it as being, you're working in F1 or whatever there. But yeah, it's quite humbling, the sort of amount of messages I get and stuff. People asking, how do you get here, or just generally being impressed. And yeah, I kind of look back and look at kind of the process of how I got here, and that's a nice thing to do. So.
Yeah, I'm sure. And what would your advice be for people that are looking to get into this area?
I think you can't rush it. I was a physio for 10 years before I got into Formula One. So it's not something that's going to happen as soon as you come out of university. I think you have to work hard. You have to take every opportunity you can working in grassroots sports. It's a numbers game at the end of the day, and you've got to get that clinical experience. Become the best physio that you can be first. So really, really hone those skills. Be known for being the best in that sense. And then once you've done that, you can then start looking at, dual qualifying and getting the additional bits that would make you, I guess, hot property for this sort of role.
Yeah. And then what's the plan for the future? Any visions of where you want to get to? You seem like someone who's quite you know what you want to achieve in this area.
Yeah, I think a couple more world championships would be nice. But no, we have some goals around the academy at Red Bull. So developing a junior driver academy. Kind of sort of physically, mentally baselining attributes of what it takes to become an F1 driver. Maybe discovering something that can be used in talent identification or something along those lines. So there's a project for a little while that will keep me busy.
Great. No, well, I really appreciate you giving you time, especially because you're in Singapore and I'm sure you've got jet lag and you've got a lot of other things to do. So your room does look nice. So yeah, no, it looks great. But no, I really appreciate your time, Brad, and good luck this weekend.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thanks again for having me on.
No problem. Thank you.